Now, a day after the Taliban reassured the world people will be safe under its rule, its fighters have reportedly opened fire on protesters. There are reports 3 people were killed at the demonstration against the group's takeover of the eastern city of Jalalabad. People were marching in the streets, chanting and carrying the Afghan flag. Video of the event later showed Taliban fighters firing into the air and hitting protesters with sticks. Rob McBride has the latest from Kabul.
I think it's being seen as really, since the Taliban just assumed power a couple of days ago, as the first major act of defiance against them. Jalalabad is a very important city. It is east of here towards the border with Pakistan, and this protest began over the national flag. Now, since the Taliban have taken power, they have very consciously been removing the Afghan national flag and replacing it with the Taliban flag. We've seen that a lot here in the capital, Kabul. It's left a lot of people very upset, but people have by and large put up with it, especially here in Kabul. Well, it seems in Jalalabad, people have not put up with it. There has been a protest. People kicked back and pushed back against this. Several hundred people took to the streets, proudly waving their Afghan flags. They marched on a square, apparently, and put the Afghan flag back up after it had been removed by the Taliban. And this resulted in a clash with the Taliban themselves. Initially, we understand Taliban fighters began firing in the air, trying to disperse the protesters, and then it seems the firing was more direct into the crowd, resulting in deaths and injuries. So it is a very serious incident. There was another protest over the same issue, the removal of the national flag in the province of Khost. That again involves several hundred people. So it is an emotive issue here, and it does come at a sensitive time. This is the eve of Afghanistan's Independence Day, when we might expect that well, feelings are running high, and there is a possibility of more protests and the possibility of more clashes.
Jan Egeland is the General Secretary of the Norwegian Refugee Council. He says his main concern are the refugees who fear for their future.
Our focus is on the internally displaced, the hundreds and hundreds of thousands, on top of the millions before this latest emergency in the country. I mean, the international airport, which has all eyes on it now, will be organized by American and other forces. There's a lot of attention on what's happening there. Our concern are the millions and millions who are now starving, who are very afraid of their existence in the future. Hundreds of thousands were displaced because of the fighting, because of the crossfire. But others were also displaced by fear of what was now coming. There could be less bloodshed now. There could be, because the conflict between the Taliban and the Afghan army, the previous Afghan army, and the international forces seem to be over. And that should enable people to return to their homes. We're doing a lot of work in Norwegian Refugee Council to secure house, land and property for the displaced and for returning refugees, if anyone are coming, so that they can have a new and durable solution to their plight. But at the moment, most operations are in hibernation. There are new rulers. It's really a period of tremendous, seismic changes.
Afghanistan's deposed president is in the United Arab Emirates. The foreign ministry says Ashraf Ghani and his family are in Abu Dhabi on humanitarian grounds. While the Taliban have taken charge of the country, we're still waiting to hear the makeup of a future government. The Taliban says it will be inclusive. On Wednesday, a member of the Taliban political office, Anas Haqqani, was pictured meeting National Reconciliation Chairman Abdullah Abdullah and the former president, Hamid Karzai, in Kabul. The Taliban's co-founder and political chief has returned to Afghanistan. Abdul Ghani Baradar arrived to a crowd of supporters in Kandahar, the birthplace of the Taliban. Baradar led the group's negotiators in talks with the US and Afghan government. Earlier in the day, Baradar met Qatar's foreign minister before leaving Doha, where those talks had been held. He was freed from a prison in Pakistan at the request of the US 3 years ago. And after taking power in Kabul, the Afghan Taliban is now in talks with the Pakistani government. Kamal Haider has more on that from Torkham border crossing.
A senior Afghan delegation comprising of senior Afghan leaders is in Pakistan at the moment. They've already held an important round of talks with the country's military leadership. They've met the Pakistani Prime Minister. Pakistan is stressing on the point that this has to be an inclusive government. The Taliban have already signaled that they will tolerate other religious minorities as well as ethnicities within Afghanistan to form an inclusive government. It is going to be important to see what kind of progress will be made in reaching a political settlement. In the meantime, the Pakistani foreign minister is planning to visit Turkey and also hold consultation with peripheral states such as Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and also with their Chinese counterparts. Pakistan has played a lead role in facilitating the talks between the Afghan Taliban and the United States. It is acting as a facilitator, and of course what happens here in Islamabad will be crucial. But it is also important to note that Pakistan is watching cautiously the moves inside Afghanistan. The signs are good. This is the first time in decades that the people of Afghanistan have a ray of hope in reaching a political settlement to the Afghan conflict.
Now, the British Prime Minister says the UK will do all it can to avert a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. But Boris Johnson says he doesn't believe military action against the Taliban is an option. He made the comments while addressing the British Parliament. It was recalled early to discuss the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan.
I think it would be fair to say that the events in Afghanistan have unfolded and the collapse has been faster than I think even the Taliban themselves predicted. What is not true is to say that the UK government was unprepared or did not foresee this, because it was certainly part of our planning, pitting the very difficult logistical operation for the withdrawal of UK nationals has been under preparation for many months, Mr. Speaker, and I can tell the House that the decision to commission the emergency handling centre at the airport, the commissioning of that centre took place 2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker.
Jonah Hull is in London with more now.
This is a country deeply invested in Afghanistan after 20 years of that NATO mission. The UK, of course, the perhaps second senior partner in the NATO alliance after the US. It was an opportunity for MPs to have their say, to discuss what has happened, to talk about what little this country can perhaps now contribute to help in the aftermath. We've seen some extremely moving, poignant, sometimes bitter and angry interventions from MPs, some of them veterans of that campaign in Afghanistan. We've seen strong questions asked to the government about its preparedness for all of this. Boris Johnson and his Foreign Secretary were on holiday as these events unfolded and escalated towards the end of last week. We've had questions about the failures of Western intelligence to be able to predict what would happen, and questions about whether more could have been done to form some kind of a coalition without the United States to stand strong in Afghanistan and head off, prevent what in effect happened. The government has tried to talk up the positives, the successes. There have been offers by the government of double the annual amount of international humanitarian aid going into Afghanistan, despite cuts elsewhere. $300 million it is set aside, not to be given to the Taliban, of course, but to be given to humanitarian organisations and the UN. Boris Johnson has asked for the UN to lead a humanitarian mission in the region. There's talk of resettling refugees. There's talk about bringing back Afghan support staff, double the number now. They're hoping to bring back 10,000 at a rate of around 1,000 a day, according to the Home Secretary.
Fatana Gailani is the chairperson for the Afghanistan Women's Council. She says the Taliban should explain what version of Islamic law it plans to apply, and as soon as possible.
I am not afraid from the Taliban, but I want from the Taliban to bring soon as possible security, peace, to stop the war in Afghanistan. For the Afghan women, is very, very important. First is to stop the war in killing and security. And second, the Taliban should to explain which kind of Sharia they are bringing in Afghanistan, because Afghan people Afghan women, they are Muslim. We are Alhamdulillah Muslim. We are not afraid by the name of Sharia, but we want to show what they are saying about women's rights. We want to see till now they just talking about women's rights very nicely, very kindly, but we want to see what they are doing, what is the program for future for the Afghan women. I'm not afraid. I'm fighting. I want state to fighting for peace, for democracy, for women's rights, for human rights. I am a leader of Afghan women. I worked more than 4 decades for my country. I think Taliban is saying now is nice about women. I try to believe. I still with hope. We are working. We are just waiting for a few days more.